Inside and lock your doors. Close your windows. There's something in the fog.
The Fog, or John Carpenter's Fog, as it's now known, is an eerie, creepy, beautifully shot movie from 1980 about the coastal town of Antonio Bay, California, preparing to celebrate its 100-year anniversary. But hold on to your horses and leave your party hats at home, because a mysterious fog starts to creep up on the town, and lurking in the fog are the vengeful spirits of ship dwellers. Who are they? And what do they want?
Between midnight and 1, it will find you.
I first saw this movie way back in the 80s on TV when I was a kid, and I fell in love with this movie. It reminded me of ghost stories that I would read, similar to M.R. James, maybe with a hint of H.P. Lovecraft as well. Co-written by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and directed with visual flair by John Carpenter. Here are 10 groovy facts about The Fog.
Number 1. Without Halloween there would be no fog.
Halloween night.
The intense slasher horror about a creepy psycho wearing a William Shatner mask on Halloween had been released and received negative reviews by people who don't know any better. And John Carpenter thought, well, that's that, and did whatever he was doing. But little did he realise that positive reviews had started creeping up, and Halloween was an astounding success, absolutely raking in the money. This encouraged the president of production company Avco Embassy, Robert Remy, wanted both John Carpenter and Deborah Hill to make a movie for them. They contacted Carpenter and congratulated him on the success of Halloween. John Carpenter asked what the hell was he smoking, as he thought Halloween had been a flop, and was surprised to find out from Avco Embassy he now had a reputation as a great storyteller in the horror genre. The Fog was given a budget of $1 million, and Carpenter began his next movie. If Halloween was not a success, then The Fog may never have come to be.
Number 2. What inspired Carpenter to create The Fog?
Whilst visiting England and having a gander at Stonehenge, Ian writer-producer Deborah Hill stared out at an impending mysterious fog that moved like an entity all of its own accord. Carpenter was spooked by this and asked what if there was something unnatural in the fog. What would it be? This set in motion a rolling ball of thoughts for his next movie. Carpenter had been a huge fan of EC comics like Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror, and they would often be full of stories about revenge-seeking spirits who had been wronged in some way. This notion was then married to the concept of the fog, which now had a premise.
Number 3. The part of Father Malone was nearly played by a huge horror genre star.
The integral role of Father Malone, played so well by Al Holbrook, was originally offered to Hammer horror legend Christopher Lee, but he was not available at the time. Christopher Lee had actually been offered the role of Dr. Loomis in Halloween, but turned that down due to the below average pay, although he did state he regretted that decision. It seems when it comes to John Carpenter horror movies, Christopher Lee was simply not meant to be, which is a shame, as he is one of the most iconic and gifted actors that ever lived, and sadly we weren't to see him in a John Carpenter movie. But so glad they chose Al Holbrook for this role. I couldn't see anybody else playing this role other than him. He was superb in it. In an alternate universe, I would be watching Christopher Lee in these movies, as that would have been an interesting and different take on the role. But I am glad Al Holbrook got the role, because he does a fantastic job.
Number 4. Shooting location.
The setting of The Fog was one of the most important aspects of the movie, and had to be just right, and they got it spot on, I think. The location scouts drove up and down the Californian coastline, looking for suitable places to shoot, and checking out several lighthouses along the way. They came across a Point Reyes lighthouse, which was perfect as it was different in shape and size to the usual tall, slender lighthouses. So when a replica of the top of the lighthouse was built, it made it much easier to shoot around due to its shape, especially the scene where DJ Stevie Wayne, played by Adrian Barbeau, would try in vain to escape the clutches of a murderous supernatural seaman, although this amazing moment almost never existed, which brings me to my next fact.
Number 5. John Carpenter thought it was a bad movie.
After Halloween, John Carpenter and co-creator Deborah Hill wanted to do something different to a slasher. They wanted a creepy atmosphere, foreboding horror, in the style of a Val Lewton produced movies such as The Body Snatcher and Cat People. They tried to create a sinister, spooky tale that was restrained and doused with atmosphere, which it certainly was. But after seeing the first cut, which was only 80 minutes long, and seeing the response of Avco embassy executives who weren't happy with the picture, Carpenter realised he had actually shown too much restraint in the movie, with a less is more approach that held too much back. He thought the film was bad, but his mind already began planning for scenes to add to the movie, to add more tension and scares and a bit more gore for a now bloodthirsty 80s teenage demographic who were watching slasher movies. With just a month to go before release, new scenes were quickly shot, such as the opening scene starring British actor John Houseman sat around a campfire telling some hair-bent kid the ghostly tale of Spivvy Point, a scene that I think enhanced the spookiness of the film and gave it that something extra.
The fog returns to Antonio Bay. The men at the bottom of the sea, out in the water by Spivvy Point, rise up and search for the campfire that led them to their dark and icy death.
I wonder if he told these soon-to-be shit-in-their-pants kids about people being gutted and having their eyes gouged out. Now that would have made an interesting episode of Jack and Ori. Other scenes that were added were some extra gore and violence, and a very creepy scene where Jamie Lee Curtis witnesses an apparent body rising from the dead in a morgue, plus the fantastic scenes of Adrian Barbeau at the top of the lighthouse fighting off the ghostly sailors. John Carpenter was much happier with the film, and it was now ready for release.
Number 6. How to promote this movie I haven't the foggiest.
With the film now ready for a February 1980 release, Avco Embassy was unsure of how to promote this movie. They didn't quite know what to do with it and felt earlier prepared poster ads were not up to scratch, so they organised a photo shoot with star Jamie Lee Curtis. They thought maybe bring in the Halloween fans and shot this now iconic poster. $3 million was spent on promoting the movie, which was $2 million more than the actual movie cost. This was spent on TV ads, radio slots, and even having fog machines installed at select theatres. Talk about an immersive experience. The film made around $22 million, with a mixed reaction from critics. Whilst not a success on Halloween scale, it was still a success all the same, and it's thankfully received more appreciation with the passing of time, and highly praised as an effective spooky ghost story.
Number 7. The special effects.
The Fog, being John Carpenter's second movie, required more extensive special effects than his previous film Halloween, and on a low budget too. A replica set of the top of the lighthouse was built, making it easier and less dangerous to shoot on, and resulting in a climatic battle atop the structure. One of the special effects artists who worked on the movie was a legend that is Rob Bottin, who has showcased his work in such movies as The Howling, RoboCop, Seven, and another of John Carpenter's classics, The Thing, which wouldn't work so well without Rob Bottin's involvement. He helped create Maggot Face for The Fog, as well as the gore, but not only that, the incredibly tall Bottin played the lead ghostly sailor, Captain Blake, and cut an imposing figure doing so. The Fog itself was obviously an important character in the movie. Hell, the movie's named after it. Shooting the Fog itself was problematic to say the least. In scenes where the Fog appears to roll out, Carpenter and his crew did not have the time or the patience to shoot it naturally, so they shot it rolling in, then reversed the footage for the film, although this meant during the scene where Adrian Barbeau is scrambling away from the spooky fog sailors on the lighthouse and they decide they're going back home and calling it a night, the scene had to be acted in reverse, so when the footage was reversed for the movie, it would play as intended. Adrian Barbeau was instructed by John Carpenter not to blink for this scene, as it would have looked unnatural when reversed later on. She did a great job. I never even noticed. The Fog was filmed using a fog machine. The fog was turned on as cameras were shooting, then a wind machine would be used to blow it away. And yep, you guessed it, the footage would be reversed in the movie, giving it a sentient presence. Carpenter wasn't too happy with shots of the fog cascading over the bay, so he had the special effects crew build a black silhouetted model of the harbour bay. The fog was blasted over it and it was lit ominously. The spectacular looking shots grace this beautiful looking movie, and for a film with such a low budget, the effects are incredible.
Number 8 Movie tie-ins and posters.
Now it seems every film has some sort of tie-in released alongside it. Wasn't as prevalent back in the 1980s, but this had some interesting tie-ins and movie posters and an unofficial Halloween Horror Nights scare house. Take a look at these. This is a novel adapted from the screenplay written by Dennis Etchinson. The novel actually clarifies that the people who were killed by the ghostly ghouls are descendants of the people who lured the ghosts, when they were alive of course, to their death. Although it's not super clear in the movie, I feel most people are smart enough to make the connection, but there you have it in print. Nika, who specialises in collectibles, released this figure of Captain John Blake. This is what I imagine Kurt Russell would look like if he were turned into a zombie. Here we have a figure of Father Malone made by Readful Things, just like when you would play with your Star Wars figures and have Luke Skywalker fight Darth Vader. Now you can have Father Malone fight Captain John Blake. But wait, there's more action figures. You need to do the Battle of the Toys justice. Ta-da! Made by Death by Toys, an actual action figure of the fog itself. I've always been a fan of alternative movie posters, especially for the non-US ones. Trying to capture what the film was about was something the studio struggled with at first, and this was going to be what they went with, but panicked and felt it wasn't eye-catching enough, so quickly drafted in Jamie Lee Curtis for the photo, which is the one everyone remembers, and I feel is a great attempt at being creepy and foreboding. This here is a Japanese poster, which is not bad. Ooh, look, there's a face in someone's hand. Now I like this Italian one. It can't be a creepy hand coming at you through the door, and I would like to think a lot of Italian teenagers had this stuck on their actual door. This is a French release poster. It's a shocker, and not in a good way. It gives me the impression I'm about to watch a slasher movie where a screaming woman gets slashed. It doesn't represent the film well at all in my opinion. What do you think?
Number 9 The Halloween Horror Nights Fog House.
Now we have come to the scare house, based on the movie, loosely and unofficially. Let me explain. Way back in 2011, Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida, had a scare house called The Forsaken as part of their annual Halloween Horror Nights event. The story behind the house was about a cursed group of sailors who had risen from their watery grave to wreak vengeance upon some unfortunate souls, exactly 100 years after their death. Sound familiar? Just like in the movie The Fog, Universal Studios pretty much admitted it was loosely based on The Fog as they loved it so much. The horror house had nightmarish scenes such as people who had been stabbed in the eyes, fog-strewn areas, and even a church where the Forsaken with their glowing eyes would appear in a green lit fog. The end of the horror house was set in a cathedral with the Forsaken coming at you. It was the same as the ending of John Carpenter's The Fog. It's a shame the house wasn't named after the movie, as it may have encouraged the younger audience to seek out the movie, just like the Dead Silence house made me seek out the movie when I went to Halloween Horror Nights in 2007. Sadly, I never got to go to the Forsaken horror house, but I believe it was a good horror house. Did you happen to be there?
Number 10 The Fog TV Show.
Way back in the 90s, John Carpenter expressed the idea of a TV series based on The Fog. It would not concentrate on what happened in Antonio Bay during the movie, but more on what terror the fog was unleashing in other parts of the US of A, and I suspect it would have had an H.P. Lovecraft vibe to it. Carpenter did say more organic ties to the movie would be revealed as the show progressed, but sadly it wasn't to be. But wait, Orlando lovers, Carpenter revealed in February 2021 that he has been in talks to be involved in a sequel or continuation of the movie of sorts, and it's looking very promising. That's a wrap. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of groovy horror, sci-fi and cult movies about one of the most interesting and spooky horror films of all time, The Fog. An absolute classic in my opinion. I love this movie, I adore it, it's one of his best. and I'm going to go off and watch it again. But that's as soon as I get out of this mysterious fog which has just appeared.